Mate, I am pumped. I'm very excited for today. Now, before we get into it, you've been a little bit flustered in traffic, mate. I understand busy cities. What's made you smile in the last 7 days? What's lit you up?
Honestly, my family, my daughter. I was just telling my daughter that I've been really like happy with the progress I'm making this year. Like I told you earlier, I've been doing a few stage plays, and just the feedback that I've gotten was a big deal. And the one in particular, one of my older professors, he came to one of my stage plays, and he sent me a really long text message. Like I had to scroll to read the message about how impressed he was. So that was very good.
It's one of those things. It's always it's easy not to send those messages, but it's also easy to, and the impact's pretty profound, isn't it?
Yeah. Definitely, definitely. It's a big deal.
100%, mate. Now, we're going to talk about all the great work you're doing now, and
Mhm.
I'm very fortunate. I get to talk to people like yourself, Kevo, and like your story is incredible, mate. Like grew up,
Thank you.
you didn't know your parents, you were shot at, sent to
Yeah,
jail, drug dealing,
yeah,
violence.
yeah.
But now you've completely changed your life. You're inspiration, you're a professor, playwriter,
Yeah,
inspirational
that's
artist.
crazy. That is
Mate,
crazy. It's
so let's
crazy.
not skip forward. I want to know because, mate, so many people, have a rough upbringing, but a lot
Yeah,
don't turn it around to be the super inspiration you are. So
yeah.
let's talk more about your childhood, mate. I can
So
imagine it was pretty full on.
yeah. So obviously I wasn't there when I was born. Like to remember, I wouldn't remember exactly what happened when I was born. But my grandfather told me this story, and he said, you know, your mother could not take care of you, so they sent you to be an orphan. And while you were in the hospital, your grandmother said, "I'll take care of him." Um, Long story short, my mom's sister actually decided, no, I'll take care of him, and she took me from the hospital and raised me like I was her own. Now we didn't grow up in the nicest neighborhood. We grew up in rough parts of Houston. So when I actually met my mother and father, I met them maybe once when before I was 10 years old. It really wasn't a big deal to me because it wasn't normal. It wasn't until adolescence hit to where when my emotions start kicking in, that I started to realize like, or compare with other kids, like, wow, I don't have parents. It just didn't hit me until I got a little early teens. So I kept in communication with my actual parents, but the connection was never there. And I know we're going through this story, but throughout high school is when I really turned to what we would call the street life. I became a huge product of my environment. And my reason was never like to be cool or to fit in. I did it out of a real necessity for what I thought was money, a necessity for money. And the reason why I say I thought that is because now the way I think, when I look back at it, a lot of the things that I was doing, like selling crack cocaine at that time, it wasn't worth it. Like if I can't go back in time and say that I would do that again because it ruins the neighborhood. And the money, I didn't do anything productive with it. All I did was be able to afford to live a life I thought that I wanted. And I mean, I can't take the experience back, which I would never say I don't want to experience it because I learned a lot of lessons. But it definitely helped me cope with the financial need that I was trying to acquire. Now, with that said, with me being so unloved as a child, I had an advantage selling drugs because I was very cold-hearted. So I didn't have anybody to tell me what to do or to tell me, hey, you can't do this, you can't do that, because I didn't have parents to go home to at night. Me and my aunt, we had a very friendly relationship, but not like a mother-son relationship. So as I got older throughout high school, I kind of did my own. I was known for doing my own thing. Fast forward after high school, the summer of graduation, I didn't go to graduation. I got caught up in a robbery mess, aggravated robbery, which I did not get convicted with. I got convicted of assault, not robbery, which is the reason why I don't have a felony. It's because after 9 months in jail, they changed my charge to assault because they said they can't prove he robbed anyone. They can only prove that I fought the person and beat him up. So they changed my charges, and those particular 9 months in jail were so influential because, being in jail, you you realize how dumb people are from the streets. You realize how behind we think. And I had a step ahead of a lot of them because I was in jail with people who were like me, who were really, really from the streets, and I was in jail with people who had just gotten in trouble. And it's unfair to people who had just gotten in trouble because they're not ready psychologically or mentally or prepared for the things that we would do to basically bully them because it's an apex culture at that point. So I spent a lot of my time in jail after I realized like it ain't really worth it being institutionalized. I spent a lot of my time reading about art. I honestly I felt like, all right, you have this ability. Why don't you learn as much as you can about it, right? And recently I retold myself the same thing. Like I want to become another level of researcher of my field. I just want to be better. But anyways, while I was in jail, I basically researched art. And when I got out of jail, I was back in the street selling drugs. I was at another level now because I was already known. And I still was very, very adopted in the street life, but I ended up getting in a lot of shootouts. And in one of them, I actually got shot, which sucked because I kind of skipped this part. I used to actually box like at this boxing gym, but being shot sucked because I got shot here, like in the back of my left elbow. And it sucked because that was the first thing they told me. Like, are you an athlete or something? Because you're not going to be able to do athletic. Because I was physically fit, so I guess they could tell. And they were like, the doctor was like, yeah, you're not going to be able to do that again. Like whatever you were doing, and that tore me up. That was one of the saddest moments in my life. So I spent the next couple months rehabilitating, but that week I spent it in the hospital. It was actually I was in the hospital on my birthday. I think I turned 18 in the hospital. So when I get out of the hospital and I've been thinking and thinking and thinking, I still go back to the streets, but I go with a different mentality. I go with the mentality of if I can make enough money to stop doing street stuff, I'm going to do it. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it's just the truth. It's just, it sounds stupid now when I look back at it, but at the time, I was limited in my thinking. I was not as aware or conscious as I am now to understand that I would have done better not doing it at all because I risked my life to do that. So I ended up continuing to sell drugs. I ended up getting, we call it a trap house. The trap house got robbed. It got shot up several times. And I don't even want to say robbed because nobody took nothing from me. It got broken into. It got shot up, and I eventually just quit cold turkey. I had a friend of mine. His name was Slim. He did tattoos. He used to do all my tattoos, and I would buy drugs from one of his clients. And he was like, man, every time I would go get a tattoo, I would draw it. He was like, man, you draw so good. Like, you should do tattoos. So I bought a tattoo kit, and I was already known for selling drugs. So people supported me as, oh, my drug dealer does tattoos now. And I messed a couple people up for a couple of years, and I ended up saving my money. And I mean, selling drugs teaches you how to save money. So I wasn't hard at that part. Wasn't hard. I ended up opening a tattoo studio, and I don't want to say the rest is history, but here we are now. After the success that I've had tattooing, I ended up going back to school, getting my bachelor's, going back to school, getting my master's. Now I'm teaching art, and I'm also doing stage plays and movies, and it's amazing.
Wow, Kevo, I done, as I said, 305 of these. I don't even know where to start with what you've just mentioned. I'll be honest, I'm sitting here going, how am I going to even ask a question about that? Firstly, mate, you're a bloody inspiration. Like, that is incredible. The way you can just talk about you know, all those experiences so calmly. Like, I've
Yeah,
never experienced anything like that, and hopefully I'm not
yeah,
going to. But the way that you've been able to just pivot so many times and
yeah,
realize that, I suppose, that self awareness. I want to go right back to just you know, your childhood, and obviously having your aunt, you know, bring you up, not
yeah.
having those parent figures or anything. No, when you were 10 and you did meet your parents for the first time, what, like, how was that? Was there any sort
Oh,
of like, are you close with them now, or was it just sort of like,
no, we're
hi?
not. We're not. My mom is actually dead. My mom
Oh,
died last
sorry.
month.
Oh, sorry about that.
I was while she was in the hospital. I went to see her a lot, so I was one of the people who saw her the most. I didn't keep any bad blood in between with me and her. We had a very distant relationship. We talk sometimes, we text sometimes. My father, same thing. If he calls me, I'll answer. If he texts me, I'll respond. We did have a argument, maybe I think in the beginning of this year, because he was telling people he had raised me, and I was like, "Don't call him, don't." He called me a liar, and I was like, "Don't make stuff up." Like I can't even name things about him. Like, you know, I
Yeah.
don't even know his birthday and stuff like that. Like, he can't name it. It just got like very awkward. But I'll explain to you what it was like. It was this is like one of the reasons that although I'm not religious, I believe there is a God. This is what it was like. It At the time when I was younger, it showed me that I was African. I had no idea I was African until I met my dad. Because I always looked at Africans like, you know, like, who are these people? Like, they're just different than Americans. I thought I was a Black American. My dad is Nigerian. So, I'm going to answer your question. I just have to circle
Yeah,
through
no,
this.
you're right. You're right.
So, I was like, oh, okay, I'm African, right? You know, that fills a void. I wasn't really concerned about not having a father. Most of my friends didn't have a father, but it was the mother part that really got to me more often than I would ever tell people. So after that 10-year-old area, that 8 to 11, I was like, okay, I started to pay more attention to things that were from Africa. And this is why this is important. It's because African Americans typically or generally have no idea their history. So it played back in my life three times. That particular moment played back in high school. I met a girl. I was in a theater class. I will never forget this. And my teacher says, "Hey, Kevin, hey, Kevin, that student has the same last name as you." I'm like, it's not a common last name, Oregbe. My father actually changed my name. That's why I met him when I was 10 or 11. He changed my name to Oregbe. And the girl walks up to me and says, "You look like my Uncle Bola." I said, "That's my dad's name." And me and her have been like best friends since. So that's one reason. And despite we don't even talk to her uncle, my dad, we don't even talk to that side of our family as much, you know. So that was one. That was the second thing. And then third, when I was incarcerated, when I would study art, it always traced back to Africa. And I always found that interesting. It all somehow the art that I would study, not the entire art history, but the things that I would study would always get traced back to Africa. And it filled me with a rage of being miseducated, because I was like, this is messed up. Like, how come we don't learn these things about history? How come we don't learn that African history is so rich and so was so prosperous? And why don't people know how the continent is being treated? And you know, and it really sent me on a path to like better myself. You know, so even now, my art, my plays are always educational. They're always insightful, and they always have some type of I know I kept mentioning Africa, but I don't want to say that. They all have some type of historical lesson, you know.
that underlying sort of education. And I suppose that's why
Yeah.
you are where you are now. And, you know, you're actually educating other people, Kevo. Like it makes that sort of whole transition and, you know, those stories, it sort of paints a picture metaphor
Yeah.
to, you know, exactly what you're doing now. So yeah, I find that fascinating. The next thing I want to know more about it, like, is inside jail, because I could imagine that would either break someone, it would turn people to do probably more crime, or like with you, it made you have a realization that, you know, there's more to life and you want to change things around.
Yeah.
How hard is jail? Like, just what's it
Jail,
like,
jail
mate?
is jail is tough. Eh, This is how you. All right, so I was in a county jail, to be clear. I was not in a penitentiary, right? But people would come from the penitentiary and be like, "I want to go back to the pen," because it's the rules are so loose in the county jail in Harris County. So people didn't like it. But the reason why jail is tough, because there's no preparation for it. You're literally in a apex environment. And what I mean by apex is like dog eat dog. It's a lion's den. Only the strong survive. You're in an environment amongst people who have more than likely committed several crimes. They just happen to get caught one time. And some of these people, that's why I say more than likely, some of these people are so in their head, afraid of what their future is going to be, that there's no love emotions in there, because fear dominates it. There's not, at any given second, somebody might just snap because, you know, their life is over anyways. So the frequency is so low. Now, this is why I think the jail has a reputation for knowledge. There's so much leisure that most people in general are very lazy and don't want to read and stuff like that. So if you give that type of leisure to a bunch of people who are criminals or just uneducated, to be honest with you, or just don't even care about learning anything new, you're going to get chaos. They're either going to become better criminals, or they're going to just wake up every day and they have no goals, no mission. It's just what's next today. If somebody mess with me, I'm going to kill them. You have that environment, and then you have a very few amount of people who are in there, whether they're trying to be better criminals or not, who are studying with their leisure, because they know if they were not, they were in what we call the free world. They know that they don't have that time to reflect or to study. So I was fortunate enough to meet a few cellies, and one of them taught me how to play chess, and another one taught me how to read law and how to understand reading law in the law library. And all of that kind of kept me away from, I had this knack for beating people up. Like I had a knack for, I just used to like beating people up. So it kept me from, especially bullies. So it kept me from scratching that itch to like, all right, I know this guy thinks he's tough. Let me just beat him up just because. When I was younger, I would do that, but I mean, I'm grown man. Nobody fights anymore. But yeah, so that's what it was like. It's just a jungle.
So it's really, and it's funny how you grow up, because you're right. Most people don't fight now just because of it to prove a point, which is, and
Yeah.
again, that's you evolving as a human. But I think what you're sort of mentioning there, Kevo, is that you attract the crowd that will uplift you, and you have a choice. It must be extremely hard though when you've got no one motivating you to do that. Like, and is that sort of one of the big pitfalls of, you know, being in jail, that it's all on you and you've got all this leisure time?
It is, but I'm not sure if that affected me because I didn't have it anyways. Like I've always been, so since I didn't have parents, I never understood the whole motivation thing. Like I understand when people call me an inspiration, but I don't I don't my source was never, like, you would think, for example, oh, he got a chip on his shoulder. You know, people would tell me that because he didn't have parents. But it's like I forgave them when I was a child. Like I was, that was my normal, you know. Uh like Bane says in a Batman movie, you think darkness is your like I was born in the dark. You know what I'm saying? So I come from um a very, I don't have that I come from not having that mother's love to being raised in the streets to selling crack at a young age to being around gang violence, drug violence all the time, watching people do heroin, crack cocaine in front of me. I come from that as being normal, and my curiosity, or satisfying my curiosity of just small moments that I've overcome. Like I didn't look at an issue in my life and look at it like, oh, this is my life. I always looked at it as something to overcome, or something was always interesting about it. When I got shot, it was like, yeah, this shit sucks, but maybe I could be ambidextrous, and I became ambidextrous. You know what I mean?
But Kevo, mate, like that, people don't just have curiosity. People aren't, looking at things as
I understand that. I understand that.
we're talking about motivation and not having essentially a mother or father figure to motivate you and be those role models. How did you, where did this come from? Because the things you're talking about, majority of the population that haven't gone through half of what you have don't have any of that. Like, can you pinpoint where it come from?
Well, it has to be the engine. It has to be inside of me, because I can't find the source. Like, I've looked through my life a lot. I've looked through, even my aunt. She claims the same thing. She told me once she can't even take credit for raising me, because she said she did raise me with love. But she was like, the person you are, I didn't tell you to do this. My barber told me this one day. He said, we went to high school together and we sold drugs together. He said, when we were in high school, bro, I used to wonder why you went to school. He said, because if I was you, I would have never went. Nobody told you to go. He said, you used to go to school, you used to go to practice. He said, and you were the last person to leave football practice. He said, you used to stay later to go work out. And he was like, nobody, he's like, nobody does that. So maybe it's just inside. Maybe that's one of my talents. And honestly, it's my normal. I hate to, I don't have a formula for it, and I hate to be that way, but it's just my normal. I just always look at the bad, and understand that if it's not for the bad, you can enjoy the good.
Wow. Um, do people, because people look up to you now, you're inspiring so many. Do people want that magic sauce? Exactly what you've just spoken about there. Like, because at the end of the day, people want solutions, they want answers. But
Well, I'm short with people. If I sense any BS, I don't involve myself with people any longer. I'm very, like, I have my own goals in life. I'm an artist. I'm full-time artist. I have my own children. I have my family. I don't have time to stress or play around over, oh, that sounds cool, that's really dope, or what you're doing, I really like it, I respect it, but I don't like hang around trying to be inspiring all the time. I
mm,
just I just go.
yeah, well, but,
Just
and
go.
I suppose at the end of the day, mate, you are inspiring, and
Mhm.
that's what you're doing. So
Yeah.
I'm a
But
big fan.
I don't try to, I hate, what, maybe I worded that wrong. I do try to help people, and I'm very adamant about education and children's education. So I do try to tell people, like, I'm one of those people who, there's this there's this philosophy in America that people say, oh, everybody doesn't need college, or you shouldn't go to school. I'm against that belief. So that is one thing that I'm like, hey, don't ever count school out.
Yeah, and you didn't come across like that at all, mate. I really gravitate to what you're saying. Do you mean that you are doing you, and that's inspiring people by what you've done and your story, and it really is. One thing I'm hugely passionate about is play and being creative, and essentially your art and through your plays, and that is one of the biggest forms of creative play. When you were in jail, and what made you gravitate to researching and studying art? Like, where did that come from? Was that
I I think it was just out of boredom of being around people who I felt like were not mentally as aware or sharp as me. It just became like, all right, so I was around people who would lie about selling drugs, and with me selling drugs, I'm listening to them talk, and it's like that's not even how that works. So it makes you not want to talk to them. And I was again, I'm very curious. So it was this guy, he would always play chess by himself, and he was racist. This is funny. He told me he was racist. It was a white guy. He was like, he will always play chess by himself. And so he told me, he said, you always looking, you know how to play? We can play. And I said, I don't know how to play. Can you teach me? He said, you know I don't like black people, right? I said, I don't care. He teach me how to play. And he wasn't joking. And he was like, yeah, fuck it. But I think it was the same boredom. I think we met at that. These people are idiots around us. We can at least cope with that. And he asked me about what I was in jail for, and he asked me, have I been to the law library? I didn't even know what that was. He asked me what I was reading. And he told me, he said, do you know that the only mail, because they would deny your mail sometimes. So if a girl would send you naked pictures or something, she would have to do like this or something, or, anything. So they would deny a lot of mail. And sometimes it would just be out of spite because we had some shitty correctional officers. And I remember him telling me, do you know that if your family sends you books, they can't deny it? And I was like, what? And my family wasn't big on books. So I told them to print some pages, and it was too many pages. My cousin printed and sent it to me. And the correction officers was like, yo, you have all these pages, like, and he actually told me about going there, actually a library in jail, and you can get books sent. And he kind of helped me out. He kind of helped me deal with my boredom. But yeah, curiosity is my best answer because I'm creative. I'm right brained, so I'm creative. And a creative person we get bored, we get bored really fast. So we have to be doing something or creating something. So I was just curious about chess and ran into him, and that's how it
Well,
happened.
I think, Kevo, they're two superpowers: being curious and then having the ability to be creative with what you're able to indulge or create. They are two of the biggest skills, particularly if the way the world's changing with AI and all this. That they are superpowers that are just going to be amplified more in life. When you
Mhm.
are in flow and you are doing your art, what feelings? What does that do for you?
I'm in the zone, so the feelings don't come until after I'm done. My this is a print. This is a copy of one of my artworks. It's not even a real one. The actual one I painted in Germany. It's like 9 feet wide. It's about 4 feet tall. It's really big. Um, I'm usually in the zone. My girl tells me all the time, like she loves to see me when I'm in my zone because I'm so like one track minded. I can't even tie my shoes at the same time. So there is no real feeling. It's I'm just completely dedicated to being better. And that um if I had to describe that, it would be I realized how much of the world I didn't know about when I was younger and how many mistakes I was making in the streets. And I've since then I've constantly been trying to overcome that. So it's not like I'm I guess that would be the best answer for this overall conversation that we've been trying to get to about the motivation part. Like, but even before then, I was always motivated to do
Yes.
something. You
Yeah,
know.
I get that, and a lot of people paint or do art or creative things for different reasons. Like it
Mhm.
could be to show motivation, could be to curious, could be to let out pain. Was
Yeah.
that ever anything like that through your art? You're able to sort of let go of your story that you explained at the start, because I'm guessing there's a
Nah,
little bit of
nah,
pain. Is there any pain?
nah. I took the bad with the
Wow,
good. The
Kevo,
so
amazing.
I'm not making this up either. So the reason why there's no negative emotions that I could describe is because I clearly understand what was happening. I I'll give you an example. There have been times that I've read about how the FBI or COINTELPRO or how the government has strategically did things to particular people, whether they be Native American, African American, Japanese. I've seen these things happen, or even we're on a worldwide, on a global scale, Jewish people, on a grander scale that's more widely known. And the way I've dealt with it is, the more knowledgeable I was about my history, and I'm very curious, and the more I learn, the more I start to understand that I was a dumbass. But not only was I a dumbass, I was also kind of placed here, unfortunately, by some circumstances that were not in my favor. You know what I mean? Like, for some people use slavery as an excuse. The difference between me and others is I don't let those things get to me. I want to do whatever I can to overcome those obstacles.
Well, that's very impressive. But at the end of the day, we normally are a reflection of our environment.
Mhm.
And I'm guessing, I don't know anyone that's grown up, in that your situation, or that from the streets, particularly in America with all the crime and gangs. But it's just a natural progression, realistically, isn't it?
Mhm.
And very few, like particularly all the people you went to school with. I know you're saying your barber was one of your friends and so forth like that. But what's out of all those people, like how many go down that path, that you did and went to jail and different things like that?
Oh yeah, nobody really. Well, some will go to jail and stuff, but nobody really did what I did. I can say that. Um, but yeah, a lot of people went down the wrong path, which is normal. But and they overcame it in different ways, but maybe not to the level that I did. Um, that's a great question.
Well, but it's really interesting because, you talk to a lot of people that have had some sort of adversity in their life, like they've gone through, I don't know, they've had, and something happened, whereas you've had
Mhm.
multiple things happen, and to bounce back out the other side, I don't know, I find it really fascinating because people struggle, they go through different things, but it's how they use that struggle to bounce back. Whereas your story, your whole life's been a struggle, and it's
Yeah,
like you just
yeah,
keep building on that. Do
yeah.
you, like, Kevin, do you sit back and be like bloody proud of what you've done? Like, do you allow that to happen?
Well, this year I did, because my girl finally convinced me. We've been together for a while. She finally convinced me to pat myself on the back. And
Good.
this year, when I did, I wrote a play, it's a beautiful play, and I actually made the script available on Amazon. It's a Because the totality of the script, what it means, is so big of a deal to me for African Americans, that I had to publish it so people could see it. And people were so impressed with that play. This is how we started our conversation.
Yeah.
Um, People were so impressed with it that people were sending me messages and emails, and I never really, like, I put the work in, but I didn't think that that was going to be the response. So this year, I did. I actually was like, you know what? I did a good job. I did a great job.
Mate,
Yeah.
not
And
just
nobody could have. And I feel like this. Nobody in the world could have written my play. What do we do now? It's titled "What Do We Do Now." I don't. It's so Kevo. It has. It's about an African American family that lives in 1965, but they go through issues from 1940s to 2000. So they go through 6 decades of issues in 1 year, which is 1965, which is the year after the civil rights movement in America.
wow.
So
So,
yeah.
but so people can check that out on Amazon, and I'll have links in the show notes for that as well. But not just proud of, the work you've done, but are you proud of the person you are? Because I think at the end of the day, that's more important than anything you can create.
Definitely, I agree with you, and I like to support stuff that has good representations of people, especially people with integrity. So I like to get on podcasts with people who I view them as, like, they watch their language. They don't, they stand for something. I try not to imitate anything fake. I try not to make fake interviews online. I try not to let social media get to me, because I want people to understand that you can be authentic in life and still live your truth. So I definitely am proud of the person I became. I would have never thought, you go back and ask that 10-year-old me, would you be teaching in college one day? Do you think you'll be teaching art? I would have never said yes. I don't care how many different scenarios, my brain was not there yet. So
Yeah.
definitely
But
proud of myself.
Well, Kevo, you should be, mate. It's seriously blown me away today. Do you find, and I try and not judge, I'm like you, I try and be curious, but when I, spoke to you, I wanted you on the podcast, I read your story, your background. It's hard not to judge or different things. Do you find people have an opinion of you before they meet you? Or
Definitely. Even sometimes you can sense it when you have a high frequency or high energy like me, you can sense it. And I've been blocked from a lot of stuff. We don't even have time for that, but I've been like, people have literally told me like, hey, this person didn't want to involve with you because of this, or this person. I remember I applied to do a art studio, and somebody denied me because they said they felt like I would try to steal the show. I'm like, I don't even think like that. Like, that's not even how my brain operates. Like, but yeah, like, definitely people judge me for different things from my past, from my. You're gonna be judged being black in America, most places, especially in the South. Either way, so yeah, from that, and even with me doing tattoos, I got judged a lot. One of the dumbest things that I've ever heard was through a podcast interview that I canceled. Actually, a lady told me she was interviewing me for my play, and she emailed me and said, "Is this your website?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Where's the play?" And I said, "The play is on a different website for the theater. They have that website." And she said, "Oh, we don't interview tattoo artists." I was like, what does me knowing how to do tattoos have anything? She was like, we interview producers. I was like, just cancel the interview. Yeah. So yeah, I get stupid judgments all the time.
Oh, mate, well, you've bounced back from it. I suppose before we wrap up, because I'm aware of your time and everything like that, and you've given so much. Kevo, you've been amazing, mate. What advice, like, because people, as I spoke about before, people are in all different stages of life. Some are thriving, some are
Yeah.
flourishing, some are really struggling. Do you know what I mean? Like, from
Hmm.
everything you've gone through, in your life to date, which is probably 15 lifetimes for most people, what advice can you give for people? Like, is it to be curious? Is it to be non-judgmental? Is it to be, those things we've spoken about today?
I think that if somebody's watching this, and the way that I feel right now, what is my spirit is telling me to say is that if you are going through something, just educate yourself about what you're going through. The more aware you are about a thing, the easier it is to understand or cope with. I've seen people play with the crocodile hunter. I see him play with animals that are completely dangerous, but he's so educated about them, he has no fear. So, you can do that. And you can also, anybody that you look up to or you're interested in, I've learned more in reading biographies than I have in any other type of book. It doesn't matter if it's self-help, reference, history. I've learned more reading people biographies than I have in. Arnold Schwarzenegger has like one of the greatest biographies of all time. Like, it's amazing to it will help you cope with that feeling that people get about what do I do? And because you get to gauge yourself amongst other human beings. Everybody's going through it. Everybody's going through it or been through it.
Yeah, I think that is very true. That people learn through stories, or people learn through somebody that's gone through that same situation. And I can guarantee, that people haven't all gone through your story, mate. But the way, like, and I'm not often I'm speeches, mate. But I tell you what, you've rocked me a little bit today, particularly that first story. I was literally sat here thinking, what am I going to say? Like, it's
Yeah.
incredible. So for me
Thank you. Thank you.
personally, mate, like, bloody impressive. You're a superhuman. I knew I'd really enjoy talking to you and your story, but I think your messaging and everything you're doing, mate, is fantastic. And being the person you are is helping so many other people. Like you said, reading biographies of other people and learning through them. Well, just the way you're leading from the story you've had is
Mhm.
so impressive. So if people want to check out your art, your tattoos, everything like that, where's the best place to go?
My website, artbykevo.com. That's the best way to check out anything I got going on. It's going to be on my website.
Perfect. Well, this is episode number 305, listeners. I'll have links for that. So you can go and check out Kevo and just reach out to him because bloody hell, mate, you have impressed me today. And keep doing what you're doing because the more people that can hear your story, the better. I've had a very privileged life compared to what you have, and it just makes me realize that it doesn't matter where you come from, what you're going through. Don't judge anyone, and you can make whatever you want if you put the work in, and you have. So from a little kid down under here, you should be really proud of what you've done, Kevo.
Thank you so much, man.
No worries.